Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rails special summer series. This is curated by the Rails section editors. During the week of July 29 to July 26, we're celebrating the sections that make up the Brooklyn Rail, which you can find in print and on our website, free and accessible to all. Our conversations this week will celebrate the editorial diversity covered in the Rail and here in our virtual events. I'm George Grella. I'm the music editor at the Rail. I've been music editor since fall of 2013, nearly 8 years. One of my favorite aspects of editing the section is advocating for all the great, creative musicians, especially in and around the New York City scene, who are outside of what the mainstream considers to be, notable musicians. Their art is itself notable. And especially on the editorial side, we like to have as much emphasis on live music as possible, which has been very difficult this past year. But the great thing about our show today and our guests is that they are all in the process of, or in this case, had already started performing live again in some major events that are happening this summer in New York City, specifically the Vision Fest and the Time Spans Festival. Vision Fest, which on this air date opened last night, in Time Spans in August. And so our guests today are Patricia Nicholson and Thomas Fichte and Darius Jones, each representing a different aspect of the live music that is happening right now. And our first guest is Patricia Nicholson. Patricia, would you introduce yourself, please?
Well, I'm Patricia Nicholson Parker. I'm the founder and artistic director of Arts for Art that puts on the Vision Festival. This will be the 25th Vision Festival. It would have been the 26th if there hadn't been this pandemic, but there was, and yet here we are, a week away from the festival. The festival actually begins next Thursday.
Well, we are talking a week away from the festival, right? But this will be airing July 23rd, and if I'm correct, that the opening night is July 22nd. Is that right?
Correct.
And I want to ask you about some of the specific, the opening night concert and the events at Pioneer Works. But the main thing is that when live music was essentially canceled because of the pandemic last year, what did you see as the future of the Vision Fest?
Well, Arts for Art presents a lot of improvised-based music. And I'm an improviser. So I just saw it as a moment to move things, that's all. I mean, you do what you can do. It's not about what you can't do. And so we did a lot. I learned how to do streams and things like that. But also, like you, the importance of live music cannot be overstated. I think everyone understands that in a more visceral way now that they've been deprived for so long. But how you respond is ever onward and ever is really understanding also the importance of paying the artist decently. I mean, we did a lot of live streams actually, as of January, we did live streaming. So people would gather, they get 3 musicians in a room, 2 technical, but you pay people because it's like, well, I always paid people, but actually raised the fee because that's important.
Yeah.
They needed the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's great. I mean, that was a big thing when live events were first canceled last year, and contracts that musicians had with ensembles or venues were canceled, and places were invoking this force majeure clause in a lot of contexts, which is kind of like, I don't know, I'm not going to characterize it very well, but it's like it was an act of God, so to speak, and so there's nothing we can do, and so you're out of luck. And that did organize a lot of interesting activism around artists trying to collect some percentage of fees. And you are one of the few organizations. We also talked, and we're going to hear this later from Thomas Fichte as well, but that figured out a way to keep paying the musicians one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like if if you do what's right, it'll, build it and they will come. Well, that doesn't always work, but it felt right and people responded and donated, and so we were able to do it. But you do it because it's the right thing to do and you kind of believe it's going to work.
Well, it's great to hear that, because that you kind of put into words, I think, the feeling that comes out of the Vision Fest. There's a lot of great music festivals, but Vision Fest is really particular in its basis in the, let's say, downtown Lower East Side, New York City improvising community, and it really is a community, and it has been for decades. It's almost like a large extended family around you and William Parker of musicians who are, they've been playing together in one configuration or another for years and years and years. And there's just that particular, I don't know, Vision Fest events are different because you feel like you're coming into a big family rather than just sitting in an audience and watching some great musicians play.
Yeah.
And that's, and I have to say that that's the live music experience in the ideal world. It's as it should be, but it seems to me that Vision Fest realizes that.
Well, I believe these are things that I really believe strongly in. I think other events have their concepts, their ideas, their aesthetic. The idea of community has not always been a popular, or it hasn't been considered cool, which is weird, but it wasn't really. It was for a while, it was deemed almost an insult to be grassroots for quite a while, I would say. So I would try not to use the word. I thought of it as a good thing, because the more you're rooted in your community, the more, and then there's the aspect of you have a community, you take care of it. But if you don't grow your community, you shrivel up. So that is also really, really important. So it's like you have a community, but you need to grow it. And we work really hard on it, and all the names that people designate to you can play in different ways. And but you have to believe in what you're doing and make what you believe in real and substantial. The people can profit from it. Not financially, maybe, but spiritually.
When did you start thinking that you were going to be able to put on live music events this year?
Wait,
let me put it in a different way.
Yeah.
When did it look like it was possible to have a Vision Fest this year?
Well, I knew I was going to have it. So that was what confused me. I knew I was going to do it. And it was just like having a sense of, okay, June felt too soon. October felt late. July felt like a good month. The end of July, let's give it as much time as we can. And that's how you figure it out. You're reading articles, you're feeling the energy around you,
Right.
you're fencing it out, and then you make a leap. You say, all right, this seems like a good, reasonable, I'm not, gamble, because
Yeah,
everything felt like that. And it's, still, we, everything is just, we hope everything works out as well as it can, that things are safe as it can. But
right.
I'm like, I like to be careful, but I'm not, I'm a risk taker, not with people's lives, but
Right,
in
right,
general, like, I'm not a scaredy cat.
right, right.
I'm willing to make decisions.
Okay.
And that's really
Right.
what you do. You decide, okay, it's a decision. And then
Yeah.
you weigh all the issues. But it's not like you're not thinking about everything.
Right. Right. And you haven't, so you are doing this year, you've arranged it so that you've got a kind of a mix of events. You have indoor live events at Pioneer Works,
Yeah,
and including this week, this opening, which is a tribute to Amina Claudine Myers.
yes,
And then you also have outdoor events like day into evening at the Clemente.
yes.
And you have a few streaming events as well.
Everything is streamed. The whole.
But what I
festival.
mean is that, is it that, so everything is streamed, but there's no exclusive streaming events?
Yes, there are two, well, there's all the films are streamed
Right.
and the conference is streamed.
Oh, yes. Okay, okay. But in terms of the music performances, everything is going to be in front of live audiences one way or another.
Correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, yeah. That's clear to me.
And by the way, about Pioneer Works, the
Mhm.
reason we decided, well, there's a various reasons we decided to go indoors there. But one of the reasons is the whole side of the building is windows.
Right.
So you're indoors, but there's a lot of circulation and
Yeah.
and so what I read and what I understand about the virus is that it's the reason it's safer outdoors is air current. The air is
Right.
constantly moving. So that's, that's what we're gonna, that's we maximize that at Pioneer Works.
Yeah.
In other venues that are all, don't have windows, it's less safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Roulette, although, for example, Roulette has been having live events, but and I know Pioneer Works has been working to, they've had openings inside their building for several months now in different configurations. So that, yeah, they've really been applying themselves to trying to make things work.
Yeah, but Roulette maintains safety by really limiting
Right.
the audience. I mean, so there's various ways that you can optimize safety. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
depending on, it's this balance of all the issues. I mean, they're really careful.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think, is trying, most people, except the crazies, are trying to be careful with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And also, I mean, every time the Vision Fest is always really impressive. I mean, it's always just the people who appear make it one of the most important jazz events and creative music events of the year, every year, period. But this year, the lineup is so deeply impressive, not just your tribute, but the musicians who are playing at the Clemente. The final weekend at Pioneer Works, the 30th and the 31st, is just, I mean, you want to get there before the first set and stay for 8, 9, 10 hours. It's an unbelievable lineup of music. For anybody who loves jazz and improvised music, it's just one knockout act after another. And also you've got Fred Moten there, who's going to be reading along with live music, and that's very exciting. You tell me if I'm wrong, but as a fan, let's say, I look at that and think, wow, all these musicians, like the last year they couldn't do this. I bet everyone was just like dying to get in there, and you have this glut of tremendous talent available to you here in New York.
Well, yeah, this is an interesting time in the music. I mean, there are a lot of there are a lot of really, there's a new crop of really good musicians coming up.
Yeah,
And that's so important. And so, yeah, there is, usually everyone wants to play the Vision Festival anyway. I hardly ever have been told no.
yeah,
So that's not an issue. But and look at, this is our 25th year. I mean, I had to do as fantastic a job as possible. And so I did the very best I could, and and I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of it, actually. And
yeah.
I spent a lot of time actually in the visual art part of the
Mhm.
festival, and to me, I would say, I mean, I've had great art festival before, but this is one of the more cohesive visual art things that I've done since 2001
Okay,
at the Knitting Factory. And that was that year the theme was Vision Against Violence. And FYI, that was in June, and in September 11th was a few months later.
yeah,
And this year the theme is breaking free, coming home. And I actually
Yeah.
asked all of the performers as well as the visual artists to write about that. So in the booklet that we put out, there's writing on what that means. It's that cohesiveness is important to me. It's that everyone has their own voice, yet
Yeah.
when we come together, we have a big voice, it's like
yeah.
we have a unified voice. And yeah, I want to talk about the conference a little bit at some point, but
Sure, yeah, please, go ahead. Yeah.
okay. All right, so the conference is also super important to me.
Right.
It's called Fighting for the Sustainability of Black Improvised Music. And one of the things you may, or I don't know, may notice or not, is that I predominantly, and have consistently done so, book African-American
Yeah,
musicians. And that's because I've chosen to do that. And I've chosen to do that because there isn't that anywhere else. that focus. And if you don't focus on something, it doesn't happen. I mean, if you go along with the way things go, we're not in control of that. The way things are moving is something that we're not controlling. It's someone else's game. So if we decide on something, we we empower ourselves, and then we can make a difference. But there aren't enough of that kind of making a difference. And it's really complicated. The issue of sustainability of Black improvised music is very complicated. It's and I mean, one thing is like how the music gains its financial stability and its credibility by going to Europe.
yes.
So
Yes.
you don't foster your, you don't foster your own artists. I mean, initially
Right.
I always include Europeans, and I've been moving away from that in the last few years, I feel sad about some of it, but I feel like if we don't focus on what we have to do here, we're not doing what we need to do. And like to me, it's like a joke, they, have you ever heard of Resolution 57? The Congress and Senate passed this resolution saying that jazz is a national treasure and should be supported, and it has all this grand language around it.
Yeah, it should this, should that, a lot of stuff should, right?
No, I think they actually said it would be, but anyway,
Yeah, oh.
it was. And as you look at that, you can, and you look at the present, you say, oh, well, they were just making a deal. Somehow
Yeah.
everyone agreed to pass it because they knew they wouldn't bother enforcing it.
Right,
And
right.
it was like, let's throw the dog a bone and like look like we're doing something. And so that's, but it's then it's other things that aren't so racist, like they're just anti-art, like, taking music out of instruments out of schools, and
Right.
and the whole, I don't quite understand how the Jazz is Dead movement happened and got sort of promoted almost.
Yeah, I've got some insight on that, but that's another topic.
Yeah, but there are all these, there are, and if you look, many of the Black jazz band, Black-led jazz, but particularly free jazz, are integrated. They're almost all integrated. You look at most of the white-led bands, they're all white, or if they have one Black musician, either the drummer.
Yeah. That's an excellent point, and I'm glad that you're pointing that out, because this is something that just puzzles the hell out of me.
Right.
I mean, but it's great to hear from your side, the inside side, putting all this stuff together, someone pointing that out.
Yeah, and it's not that this is like, I've become very happy with the word systemic racism, because finally we have a clean phrase that, because no one thinks of themselves as racist, and they're not what they aren't, the problem is they don't understand their privilege, and they're not taking responsibility as privileged people.
Yeah.
And and if you understand that within this large systemic situation, then you realize, oh, actually, I can make a difference by my small actions, and they can lead to more good, fair, equitable situation.
Right.
And, it's like that equity also is something that I think people of privilege feel like they're giving up something, but I don't think I think it may feel like that at times, but I think we all come out richer in the end. I
Absolutely.
think if you feel like you're like sacrificing, you're not going to be happy, and you won't do it very much, and then that'll be done. But if you see it as like an enrichment of your own world, what kind of world do I want to live in?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to get into this in depth and the conference, which will be the second week on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay. And the conferences can be viewed through the Arts for Art website.
It'll be a Zoom webinar, but then we'll have it on YouTube, and I probably will embed the YouTube on the website. Someone else does that, not me.
Right. Yeah. Just so even if people can't see it in real time, they can see it after the fact.
We'll keep it up for a while, and then we'll
Right.
actually edit it into pieces, so that's in bite-sized pieces.
Okay. And also I want to go back to what you began by saying, talking about the conferences, because that was really an enlightening point, I think, when you were talking about how the musicians have to go to Europe to get work, even though most of them are living right here. And the Vision Fest is that great but bizarre opportunity for people here to see their neighbors play music.
Yeah.
Or someone like Amina Claudine Myers, who's really she's a fantastic musician, and she's generally so little known for what she does, because it's so infrequent that you can actually see what she's doing in or around New York City. But if you live in Europe, you have a much better idea of her achievement, which is really broad and deep. So it's great to have these 2 nights to just for people to just dig into what she does, because if even if you know some of her records, I know from personal experience, you're going to be stunned by what she does, because you've never heard this stuff before.
Yeah, her idea of, for her, not her idea, for her freedom and the idea of free jazz.
Yeah.
It's different than it was for a lot of people of her generation.
Yes.
It's this idea of freedom to, it's like she took in all this music as she was coming up.
Yeah.
And it's all there. And she didn't decide, oh, I'm going somewhere else, I'm going to leap off into another. No, she kind of integrated the gospel, all the choral music that she loved, and this creative energy. She was in the very first year or two of ACM, so she was like right there as all these ideas are percolating. So that's there. Plus the blues. I mean, it's all really right there, and I love that. I love that because I like to, I like to think of when I would define this was as in my role as artistic director and director. Before that, I was just the director.
Yeah.
I defined free jazz, and I defined it as a disciplined disregard for traditional boundaries. And I also had a longer one that said, it's not a freedom from, it's a freedom to. And because, so it's this, that's what freedom really means. It's this freedom to explore into everything. It's all music.
Yeah. Well, I think, the programming you put together this year, it really promises to do that, because you've got the AAC roots, you've got the tribute to Milford Graves. The last weekend, you've got the newer generation with Jamie Branch and James Brandon Lewis. I mean, it's just different aspects of this really, really vast field that, again, if you're going to the Morris Festival, if you are living, you live in France or Germany, you can get around Europe and see this stuff, all summer long, all spring, all year round. But, here in the, it's home.
US of A.
Yeah. It's US of A, East Village, Lower East Side, New York City. It's, boy, there's no, the Stone is kind of still exists.
Well,
what else is there?
Not yet.
That's right. It's not really open again. Yeah.
I don't know when it's opening, and I mean, the Stone is really important, but yeah. I hope that we can all together. I'm sorry. I'm like almost, but I hope that we can make it the way we want it. And if we kind of focus on that and not bemoan the state of affairs, it's kind of horrific, actually, in a general sense. We can the only way I can actually survive right now, the reason that is that I believe that we create a world that we then live in. So we can't change everything, but we create this this incredible creative environment that we're happy to be in. And that out of that, other little positive creativity are fostered, because they must be. We all need that,
All right, well, let's talk about getting people out to see all this great stuff. Now, again, people are watching this at the very earliest on July 23rd. So opening night was last night, July 22nd at Pioneer Works. And there's another set of, and these events are multiple sets from different musicians.
Right.
There's another one tonight at Pioneer Works, the 23rd.
Right.
And then over the weekend at the Clemente, is that right?
Let me just put it the easier way for me.
Okay, please.
On the Thursdays and Fridays, it's at Pioneer Works.
Right.
The first weekend, which is coming up quickly, is the Clemente. Then the following Saturday is the final day at the Clemente, and that's the Milford Graves thing. So if they're watching this, if you're watching this on the 23rd, then this is Amina's night. So no.
Yeah.
By the way, she likes German chocolate cake.
Okay. Yeah, and this is Amina's night tonight on the 23rd, but also there's music all the first weekend.
Yes. And
then 2 more sets of concerts on the 30th and the 31st at Pioneer Works.
Yeah. No, the 29th and 30th is Thursday, Friday is Pioneer Works, and the 31st is Saturday. We're back Monday.
Right. And for those who don't know, Pioneer Works, that's in Red Hook.
Yes.
And
there's a
if you
ferry
if you can get the ferry, that is the best way. I tell you, I until recently I was living in Red Hook and I loved it, and nothing beats. Don't be in a hurry, but if you're not in a hurry, take the ferry.
Well, it depends on where you live. The ferry's quick if you're on the ferry stops.
Of course. And to get is it best for people to get tickets ahead of time, or can they get tickets at the door?
Both. You can, you can. It's good to get tickets ahead of time. It's always, safer and stuff like that. You can get tickets ahead of time, or you can, or at the door, and we'll be able to deal with all that.
And tickets are available at artsforart.org.
Exactly.
Right, and it's Arts for Art.
Yeah, ARTSFORART.org.
Right, and that has all the details on the lineups and the schedule. And you will be you said you're going to be live streaming the music, and where will those streams be available?
You also go to the website. It'll take you to Eventbrite, and you can buy live stream tickets, or you can buy in-person tickets.
Okay. Thank you. Not if it's clear to me, then it's going to be clear to everybody else. All right. Fantastic. Patricia Nicholson Parker, thank you for joining us to talk about the Vision Fest. It's really exciting to have such major live music events returning to New York City, just period. But also, again, the Vision Fest is one of the premier jazz events, period, if this music matters to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, we're now talking with Darius Jones, and I'm going to introduce you incorrectly, so please correct me. Okay. But you are a musician, you're a composer, you lead ensembles, you've produced records for others. Am I correct in saying that you do theatrical work as well? You produce a lot of creative music. So, yes. But tell me what I'm missing.
No. I mean, I'm a teacher. You pretty much hit it. I'm just all around. I very much look at myself as an artist. It's just like, and sound is pretty much the medium that I work in. I don't really think about style or any of those concepts.
Yeah. Generally, people or listeners are going to identify you primarily as a jazz musician, but your work goes beyond that.
Yeah, I compose classical works, new music works. It's kind of hard to just like the jazz moniker. I'm very honored to have it, but it I think I venture outside of that a lot and venture inside of it a lot.
Right.
So it's just like it's a part of who I am. I'm just me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I am going to take this a little bit from the jazz perspective, though.
Really fun.
And it's kind of a useful framework.
Yeah.
Which is that this past year, year plus, year and a half of the pandemic experience, performing opportunities were shut down, and also for musicians for the kind of musicians who, let's say, you might be able to catch at the Jazz Gallery or the Village Vanguard, that's not the bulk of the work. The economic work of being a musician. There's teaching, there's, arranging people, you're playing in other bands, more pop music on tour, some people play on Broadway, things like that. So was that really the case for you as well, that kind of every opportunity for a working musician was curtailed?
It was funny you say that because I am revisiting, as that time,
Yeah.
and I find myself, I was on tour I think the day before it shut down. No, I flew in and they shut down. So from New Mexico, I flew in from New Mexico. I was playing with Desron Douglas's trio out in New Mexico. We were there for almost a week or something, and within that span of time, I remember flying in, and it was just like wash your hands. You know what I'm saying? It was chill, and then within that span of time, it went from wash your hands to oh, we're gonna shut down, and it's kind of like a wild thing because it was oh yeah, coronavirus, which as a musician you're conscious of people being sick because if you get sick then everything gets all wonky with your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I looked at it at first, but then it was it went through these different layers, and so the gigs in March started drying up, and I was one of those people that had stuff booked all the way. My schedule at that point was kind of packed all the way up until August, and so I was a little bit one of those people who were in denial at first, like the shit, it was Dez's trio had a gig in town, and that got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was the tour I had later in March got canceled, and and then I'm also teaching at the new school, so that was one of those things that they were okay, we need to shut down. Schools are shutting down. You got to switch to virtual, which it was what is that? You know what I'm saying? Zoom. And the only reason I knew about Zoom was because of my ex-wife using that because she worked with Doctors Without Borders and had conference meetings. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it was all of these little things. And then it didn't stop. That was the thing that was really kind of trippy. It's it just kept going. You started hearing these stories from other people. I had friends that were overseas. And so it was and I had friends who were on Broadway. And it was just slow, just bang, 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 bang. And, when they canceled the thing in June, which I was supposed to be in Canada, that's when it hit me hard, man. It was I kind of lost it. I was just holy shit. My whole entire thing was just wiped out. All of that. I mean, we're talking about a lot of income.
Yeah.
Completely just decimated. And all I had was teaching, which I was I was fucking super appreciative of that. But I also, as a teacher, I felt bad for the students. It was just watching my students go, us getting to a certain vibe in the classroom because, they had, end of January, February, early March, and then, that whole thing went kapow.
Yeah.
You had students who were having to literally go back home. It was rough, man. Oh God. It was really hard, really difficult. And when you don't have touring, that's a huge part of people's income. I mean, it's because records and shit don't sell. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not making money off that stuff. I mean, and if you are teaching, if you have a really good teaching gig, then yeah, you were definitely like happy to have that at that time.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you continue. Yeah.
Well, and for you as a musician that whole time, other than the teaching, there's no chance to play. So how does that change your practice as a musician?
It was funny. So, like I said, at first I was just like, oh man, I actually was relieved a little bit that there was a break. I was like, okay, I could get these commissions done. And I could get these pieces done for these, different recording projects I had.
Mhm.
I had literally like a recording session booked in May, a recording session booked in June, and another one in July for totally separate projects.
Mhm.
And at first I was like, okay, great, some space. I was really exhausted. A lot was happening in my life in the previous year, personally, and so there was a flow into 2020 that was a little rough,
Mhm.
and I was a little relieved. I was like, yay, I have a little space, but the money situation was that was like the scary part.
Yeah.
But I had the teaching gig, so I was like, oh, well, I'll just have to kind of make everything uh, smaller in my
Yeah.
life. And that's kind of how I thought about it. But not performing at all, I remember talking to Threadgill, and Threadgill telling me, like, don't, everyone's out here just practicing, practicing, practicing. He was like, that's not, you have no outlet. He expressed like, you have no outlet. So it's like, where's all of that energy going to go?
Interesting.
And, and it was like some really wise words, because the thing is, it's like, you could, there's different ways of practicing. Like when you can practice in a functional way, there's like a functional way of practicing where it's just like maintenance. You're just like
Right.
taking care of business, keeping things tight, blah blah blah. Then there's a type of practicing where you're actually pointing towards something and trying to put something else in your arsenal. And
Hmm.
then there's like that practicing of just learning material,
Right.
and usually that's what you're doing for a gig, or or if you're doing it for yourself, you're trying to learn, maybe a new technique, that things to put into your arsenal, that kind of thing. And so, you know when you didn't have that outlet, and depending on what you were going through, for me personally, it was like a flow state. Like I was like, you know there were things that I was investigating that I was like, oh, I'll just investigate this shit more. But then it was like kind of, but then you're just dealing with that void. You're just like in a void. And so, I kind of I let it just ebb and flow. Like, which was the first time in my life that I ever did that, where I just let it go at times. Just, I was like, I'm not going to practice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because it was just depressing. For
Yeah.
me, I'm talking about for me. It was like, it was depressing. Did I work on stuff? Yeah, but it was like that. It was like I didn't feel like always like that was needed to get me through. I was like,
Yeah.
and then there were times where I was like really tuned in. It was a lot going on, so it was rough.
Yeah. And now, here we are, we're talking in middle of July. And are there things coming up ahead where you're going to be performing again, either your own stuff or working with other musicians?
It's interesting. It's like, so I should say this, yes, to your question. Yes, I have performed, and I am performing. There's stuff booked. Stuff has started to come back to life. Is it
Yeah.
this? Is it in the same manner that it once was? Yet for me, no. But
Mm.
because not everybody's back. It's like this slow, you know, it'll come. But
Mhm.
um, and I was like one of those people who didn't do virtual. I didn't do any virtual like playing. It didn't feel right, and so I would do stuff where it's like we would play in a space and someone would film it. And I started when people started figuring that stuff out, I would do those kind of things. But like just
Mhm.
like in my house, I just kind of refused after doing it once.
Yeah, yeah. When you're saying that not everybody is back, are you specifically talking about a real in present in-person community of musicians, people who moved temporarily to different places and just haven't not everyone is literally back in New York City yet, for example.
Um, I, I don't. I mean, the dust hasn't settled yet. So I mean,
Yeah,
like, venues that all venues, especially in New York City, aren't back. Like
yeah,
Vanguard isn't back. You know what I'm
no,
saying? It's like certain like the jazz gala is just starting to have.
starting, yeah,
It's like places are just Blue Note is starting to have maybe
yeah,
it's like you know not all the festival circuits are like back.
right,
There's some European stuff that's definitely going down and cats are doing things, but it's not all just like running the same way it once did. And
yeah,
also musicians have made some choices. The situation definitely has created a circumstance where there is definitely a distrust in the framework
hmm.
that
What do you mean by that?
I think I think if we're all honest, it's just like we all know. I mean, this situation has created a circumstance where you're definitely like it could be gone. It's like
Huh.
it's easily it's like fragile. That's the way it's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
fragile thing. It's not a guarantee,
yeah,
and some of that's kind of beautiful, and so cats are really um, taking it in and appreciating it
hmm,
deeply. And I think that's happening for the musicians and those who love the music.
yeah,
Um, and I think that people are also thinking about more creative ways to create, like, because I think the infrastructure that existed needed work before.
hmm,
And I think now people are thinking about that. Like, they're considering different pathways. And I
hmm.
think people who were like, kind of grinding maybe road dogs before are now probably teaching somewhere.
Hmm. Okay, okay, yeah,
You know what I'm saying, or definitely has that component in place now if they didn't have it before.
yeah. Well, that's interesting to hear too, because it's easy to see stories sort of about general, American economic culture about people who have been thinking, giving second thoughts to their work situation and the whole idea of the office and things like that. Now, for musicians in your situation, it's economically in America is an entirely different thing.
Oh God.
Really precarious, and you're always scrambling. And so it's fascinating to hear that impact has been so deep that even jazz musicians are thinking, is it really worth it to keep heading out on the road all the time and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, cats have definitely made decisions. Like, it's shocking to me. It's like cats have like moved,
Yeah,
whether they were planning to do that or not. Cats are moving.
yeah,
Folks are making very serious decisions about the direction of their career. They know that the road isn't this finite thing anymore.
yeah.
I don't know what the money's going to look like. I was already hesitant about all that shit before.
Mhm.
So, we don't know what the road, going to Europe is what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
That road, venues are in precarious situations because of just the financial hit that they've taken.
yeah,
Um, it's like, to me, it's like the dust hasn't settled. I mean, cats are touring. I mean, like Europe is open again. It's
yeah.
like there are cats who are out there doing that shit. I mean, it's happening, but we don't. I mean, to say to I think it's premature to just be like, oh, it's all good. It's like it's here. I mean, I just, you know, I'm not saying that that won't happen. I'm just saying, I'm just like, man, let's one day at a time. You know, and like it's just like let's check it out. I'm the kind of person where I'm just like trying to realize other aspects of myself. It's
Okay.
like that's how I am as an artist. I'm not like the road is just one component of a larger thing.
Mhm. And now that, I don't know, let's just say that things are slowly returning to, it's not normal, but maybe there's a path to normality. How does that change your again, your practice now that you've gone through that whole long period of you described it very well about not really having the, I, I'm not going to get the right word, but kind of like the existential need to, or necessity to keep that same practice of maintenance or learning new material or things like that. Are you back into another kind of transition?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just like it was more. I would describe the practice that I was doing was more maintenance. Was more
Mm-hmm.
like it like if you were like if you looked at it like like boxing. It's just like you just working on fundamentals. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like you're not being met with these sort of challenges. Now you may be saying to yourself, "Hey, I know some holes, or man, there was this shit that I was like kind of investigating, and when people hear the stuff that I'm about to put out, they'll hear that they'll be like, oh shit, like he's, it's like there's something going on there, but it's just like to me, I'm a person who's just like fundamental driven, like the fundamentals. If I can take that now, another thing I realize is that when you have all the time in the world, your practice can be different too. It's like it's like to me, the practice is more like you can exist more like an artist.
Mhm.
Meaning that it's just like instead of thinking about your practice being like this one moment, I'm getting this time. It's like now you can think about it in this like very larger way because you don't have commitments. You don't have this commitment, that commitment, this commitment. That kind of stuff is like, well, I need to learn this music. I need to get this music together. I need to do this, do this. It's like I all of that was gone.
Yeah.
I didn't need to do any of that. So now it's just like, oh, my artistic side became more prevalent. And some people might be like, well, it seems like it's always been prevalent, but for me, it's just like it's like I think the thing that my practice has brought to me now is that it's just like, man, I really don't give a fuck what anybody thinks.
Okay.
Like it's just like I mean I really don't like the way I'm gonna probably be playing um, after this sort of experience is very different for me. It's just like
Mm.
whether it's like it sounds different for other people. It's like it's a more of like a mindset. Like I'm not like trying to show or prove or consider
Yeah.
anyone. Like it's just like, am I digging it? Okay, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
For
I don't. Yeah, it sounds like you're making me think of Sonny Rollins practicing the Williamsburg Bridge, and kind of dropping out of performing for a while and coming back with a whole new set of ideas.
yeah, you just. I mean, I think it's interesting you brought that up because it's like I think when we like to me, Sonny Rollins is like a perfect example of just an artist. Like he's like, people thought he sounded good before,
Yeah.
but for him, it was like, nah, there was something he was trying to get at.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the same. I mean, there's something I'm trying to get at,
Okay.
and now I'm more like being fearless about the process of getting at that thing.
Yeah.
As in the past, I wasn't necessarily that way,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, that's fascinating to hear. And it's a you don't hear that from a lot of artists across all mediums, that kind of rethinking thing.
Yeah, I think, I think it's happened in jazz music a few times. Like Mal Waldron is a good example of that.
Yeah.
He went into the sanitarium and came out and played totally different than the way he played before. I mean, it's like even Charlie Parker took these huge breaks at moments. And yes, he was in a sanitarium, but it's just like, what I'm saying? It's like Mingus, another one,
Yeah.
took huge sloth. Miles Davis, like 5 years of nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, I think it's more common than people like to say. Even someone like Chris Potter isn't practicing every day.
Yeah.
It's like, I think we need to like stop the illusion of the, like there's this illusion that's been given of the jazz musicians just shedding every day. Like, it's like everybody's doing it. Like, Cannonball stopped practicing like at a certain point. His brother talked about it. It's like, he didn't practice anymore. Dexter Gordon said, he was like, well, shit, man, 35 minutes. If it's like, get your 35 minutes in a day. And he was like, you good. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause
Yeah.
if you figure out what you want to do, then it's just like, what are you really doing? It's like, and then, I mean, Train was like, he would search. He was a perfect example of the mystique of practice. It's like, what he would do is if he was trying to figure some shit out, he would be in that motherfucker forever. But then it's just like, man, until he found that space again, it's like this is a part of the process. And I think in some ways musicians probably had space. I don't know about other people, but for me it's just space. You have space to kind of to think, like to really consider, like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Saying, instead of just like doing.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Like, what does this sound like?
It sounds like there might be parts of the whole pandemic experience that you might miss once they're gone, once the situation in society means that you can't have them anymore.
Yeah, I think there's certain things I'll miss, but there's certain things that I learned that I think I'll carry with me.
Mhm.
And I think that in general, I wouldn't want to be back in that state because it wasn't my choice.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, it's like, now I realize that I should make that time for myself in the foreseeable. And I did do that at one point in my, like, I was one of those people who took a little break at the end of the year usually and left New York and went out to the woods and stuff, because that's where I find a lot of inspiration. But I, sometimes you get in the grind, you do shit. It's just, we're all different, man. It's like, for me, I think the thing that I realize is that you can't care about the system at all. Like, you have to just be an artist. Like, allow yourself to be as creative as humanly possible. I think when we're gigging, and we're front of an audience all the time, our mindset turns to that format, which is fine. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, I got a job to do, da 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 da. But I think for someone like me, who is, thinking about creativity and, just abandonment and all these other things, I think it's not always like, I already was kind of doing this, but now it's just like, I'm realizing like the relationship I want to have with the audience more. Like, that's more clear to me now than it was before.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that, but I think we have a clip from you that we're going to show, so people who just, who strangely, you unfortunately are not really familiar with what you do yet. Give a good example of some of, the vast amount of music you're producing. Can you just give us a brief introduction of what it is that we're going to be taking a look at?
Yeah. So this is something that I I kind of got really heavily into. Um, I was getting into this, but I this is an example of me just going hardcore in this direction.
Okay.
So let me play through this.
Now, where is this?
This is so I filmed this and I made this sort of like montage, and so it's like this is the back of my apartment, which I saw a lot of. And so I started seeing things that I probably would have noticed if it was so still. The world was as still as it is.
Yeah. And are you working with your mouthpiece here?
So these are just sound recordings. You'll hear me enter soon.
Okay.
So and I'll explain what's happening.
Okay. Hmm.
So for me, I mean, I mean, this is long, but and I'll send it. But here's the thing: for me, this was about it's something happened to me where the sound changed that I was hearing. I could hear everything now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was like weird. It was like I could like being in the same space. I could hear all these things, and field recordings are a thing that I was already getting into. I was like listening to a ton of them, like all kinds of stuff, and not just animals. This is all just animals,
Yeah.
and I I found myself just like wanting that feeling of being in nature, like just being there and finding a, a space for myself in the midst of it, because there's something really powerful and beautiful about the counterpoint of sound that we hear
Yeah.
like all the time. Like it's just happening around us, and if we stop and we just listen, it's like the most harmonious thing ever.
Yeah.
And I feel like as musicians, sometimes what we do is the opposite of that. Like we're not like we're like we're just like taking up space, or cutting, it's like this sort of like very just like barreling through thing, which is totally cool. Like I've done a lot of that myself, but it's just like I think the thing that happened with the pandemic was it's just like, how do I get to that state where I'm creating sound that feels like it's a part of the greater whole. It feels like it's just a part of the tapestry.
Yeah.
And not leading or not leading, but it just exists and it's just being. And so in this piece, I'm basically creating a scenario for myself, where there's all this stuff happening. It's just like, it's like these animals and coming in and coming out, da 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 da. And I'm having to find my space and exist in my space and not mimic or match or do any of that, but like to just exist and develop and also just learn how to deal with space in a different way than I was dealing with before. And I feel like that goes into phraseology, like how you choose to phrase over a certain thing. And that goes into developing a unique style. And so there was questions about my style that I had before, and now it's just like, oh, okay. Some of those questions I was able to answer during this period and was able to get to a place where I hear it better. And so I can zero in better and be like, oh, okay, I'm getting to something. Or, man, I don't feel really inspired right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for choosing that clip too, because that is, I think, deeply, deeply fascinating, and I think very exciting to get a look into. This is something that, listeners, audience, critics, we don't get this experience hardly at all, which is what a musician is thinking when they're exploring their own thoughts. It's a little bit of an insight into that experience of, yes, you're rethinking things, you're looking for new things. It's the practice that happens behind the scenes that, when I'm sitting in an audience, somebody comes out on stage and starts playing, the playing comes out of that, but I have no insight into that, how they got to that point. And especially since you're talking about all these rethinking things and changes and stuff like that, that's really just, I think, super valuable for us all to take a look at. That's just one of the, thank you. That was like, it's not about good and bad. It's about, that's really learning something and insight, and it's a kind of a revelation.
I think that's what I'm trying to express about how different like it's something about time, space, and time, and everyone's going to approach this differently, but it's just like approaching it from the point of view of like process, just like, oh, this is where I'm at today. Okay, let me rethink that and come back to it. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like, instead of like this sort of like, I gotta get this. It's just like, it was more like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, let me think on this. And then, and it's just like, it was more of that kind of energy. And so I was able, and then I would stick with something like that for a while. That's the thing. It was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna stick with this thing and think about it and try it. And there's, and then there would be times where I would go really into a certain kind of zone, and then there would be times where just ebb and flow. It'd be like a couple of notes, or this, that, and another. And I think the thing is, I realize it's like there's no. I think that for me, the idea of forcing it is a thing that I think I don't want.
Yeah.
Like, the thing I was learning from the animals was like all animals have a cry. Like they have it's a roar. They all have a roar. It doesn't matter what kind of animal it is. It's fascinating. It's like they have a roar. And that roar is communication. It's like, it's not about intimidation. And I feel like a lot of times the way I was thinking about playing was more from a weaponry standpoint. So it was just like the saxophone was a weapon. It was like, I'm going to use that weapon to fucking do whatever the hell I want to do. And now I think it's more like, for me, it's like turning into this more like animal thing. Like, what kind of animal is this? And trying to figure that out and develop that, and which is very difficult. I'm finding that it's like, it's not about mimicking those animal sounds. It's more about understanding them and how
Mhm.
they work, and how that an animal is saying, like, an animal doesn't, like a bird doesn't hear a lion and roaring "Rawr," and starts to go "Rawr." They're like, it's like they're doing their thing, and
Yeah.
those things can exist next to each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, and find this sort of interesting relationship. And that's where I'm at now. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, and I'm really into that. I'm excited about the future right
Right.
now.
Well, this has been utterly fascinating, and yeah, this is just great to hear these ideas that you have. But let me ask you just one more question now, because the future now is, let's say the future is live. So, is there something that you've got that you're looking forward to in particular, that you're going to be in front of a live audience doing?
I'm going to be playing with Dave Burrell on October, not October, but July 22nd, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, is that at the Vision Fest?
Yeah, that's going to be at the Vision Fest. We're going to play
Oh,
duo.
now, we are just for the viewers, we are speaking before that date, and this is going to be available after that date.
Oh, sorry.
But hopefully, I will have seen you there the night, which was last night. It will have been last night, but that's cool. Yeah, I mean, and because that's another thing that's one of the big things that's happening now, that we can have live music again. The Vision Fest it's really important that that's back in front of live audiences. And
Yeah,
that's, and for everybody who's watching this, that is ongoing right now as we speak.
yeah. I mean, that's something that is on my mind the most right now. And there's some surprises coming out in the
Yeah.
fall, but I can't talk about them yet.
All right. Well, that's fine. No, but and are you? Is it good? Is it good to be in front of people again to play?
I think it's good to be able to. I should say it like this. Like, I mean, I've been doing things. I mean, I did a whole thing in Greenwood Cemetery. I really dug that, and the audience,
Right. Right.
you know,
Right. With
kind of
with
like, yeah, with Desron and Gerald Cleaver.
yeah.
That was really dope. And I've been doing performing. Me and Matthew Schiff did a duo, uh, you know, in a storefront kind of situation that was deep. I mean, I've had some really beautiful experiences
Yeah.
during the pandemic playing, and the thing is, it's like, man, for me, it's really about playing with the cats. I mean, that's the thing that I'm gonna enjoy doing the most.
Yeah.
And getting back to just, I think that the audience and the like, I love a good audience, a beautiful audience. I do. I think it's great, but it's like the thing that gets me really going, man. It's just like like playing with folks. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, I'm excited about that. Like, I'm excited to be able to play and hear Dave Burrell in my ear, and me finding a way to get my vibe into
Yeah.
his vibe. And it's just like, I'm super excited about that. Like, that's the thing that is like exciting. The audience, I'm you know I, that's gonna happen, and I hope they're there, and I'm excited that they're gonna be a witness. But I think people really are underestimating, like, the the real world isolation that took place
Yeah.
for a lot of musicians. Like, the idea of, like, cats couldn't play with other cats, and that was like, what the fuck? This whole thing that we do is really about that. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's about that sort of connection that's happening on the bandstand. And and the beautiful thing is that the audience is witnessing that thing.
Yeah.
They're being a part of that process, and so we're all in there together, having this sort of exchange, and I look forward to that. I'm a naturally mercurial, um, somewhat shy individual, so it's just like the audience doesn't always, um, you know, is not the first thing I think about. It's like I love them and want them to be there, of course, but um, I really and I always enjoy seeing them.
Yeah.
But I very much look forward to the ability to be able to play with other musicians again, in person.
Great. Well, Darius Jones, it's been great hearing from you
Yeah.
in this conversation. And yeah, I am, everybody else who digs creative music is looking forward to hearing from you and the horn in person.
Yeah, I hope so. And I look forward to sharing what I learned. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right now, we're talking with Thomas Fichte, who's the artistic director of the Time Spans Festival, which is it's not only one of the live music events that's going to be happening this summer in New York City again, but it's actually because of the circumstances, I think, of what's happening all over the country with the pandemic. It's going to be one of the major new music events in North America in 2021. And Thomas, please correct me if my dates are wrong, but the festival starts August 12th and runs through August 29th.
That's correct, yes.
Right, and there's 11 concerts at the...
we have 11 or 12 events. I have to count, yes.
Well, that is a substantial number. And my experience, having gone to the festival before, is that it seems, and I'm speculating, but since the festival was canceled last year, that you've almost combined last year's festival and this year's festival into one really large event. Is that anywhere near the truth of the circumstances?
It is a kind of a mixture of last year's events and new events. We're taking some events from last year into this year. We recorded some events of last year that could not happen on video, that are only on video. And we do certain events this year that would not have happened last year. It's a mix.
Okay. Do you feel like you're sort of catching up for lost time?
Yeah, that's one thing, certainly. We missed the live events, and it was really hard for everybody not to have them. I also learned from what happened last year. So some of the events were already created in a way that it would be possible to have something happening, even if only small audiences would be allowed. And that's one of the reasons why we chose the MPEG wavefield system, wavefield synthesis time, because that's almost an installation with a 3D sound system. And we do this 4 times a day, and there are only 25 people actually should be in the space, because conceptually, just because of, so they are experiencing the 3D sound. In other words, I did some hedging in order to meet situations that were uncertain to me.
Could you explain a little bit more what that sound installation is?
Yes, the wavefield synthesis array is a system of loudspeakers, hundreds of loudspeakers actually, in fact, that are controlled by a lot of computer power. And computer power is calculating delay and decay. And the result is that it is actually possible to be in the space and perceive a sound source as if it was coming from the space. In other words, it's not like in a stereo system where you can be in an ideal place and you can locate a band on stage or something like that, it's really like the sound is emanating from where it's supposed to emanate. It's as if a string quartet could be put into a space and you could be next to the inside the instrument, standing where the instrument is. And there are like 2 or 3 or 4 systems in the world. The most other systems I know are actually built into a wall, like hundreds of speakers into walls that create this effect. And this system is transportable. It's made in blocks. It can be put into a truck or a van, and we transport it into the MENA Center for Classical Music in Manhattan. And the MPEG Experimental Media and Performing Arts Center in Troy was actually responsible for curating 4 composers who create music for this system. It will be not live musicians, it will be a concert, but it will be a concert that is played through the systems. But the pieces that we will hear, which will be together about 1 hour, have been created for this situation, for this system. And but there are also works in progress. In other words, each piece that maybe has a 15 minutes duration during those events will then be developed at MPEG into a full evening piece by each composer, as far as I understand their planning.
I see. That's fascinating, and that's going to be something that's running for the duration of the festival, separate from the evening concerts. Is that right?
Not quite. We do start the festival on August 12th, and then we run 4 shows a day until the 15th and 1 show on the 16th. And then we have to change, get everything out and change for the next events. And the next event on the 17th will then be a concert, and then the wave system is gone.
I see.
So we have about, we have 17 opportunities for 25 people each to sign up for a ticket for this event.
Okay. And I feel like I'm actually gotten a little bit ahead of things too, because the most important question is probably, how long has it been since you have been part of a live music event, and what are your feelings and thoughts about heading into this? And in addition to that, are there still any kind of pandemic protocols that you are instituting for the festival?
Well, I've spent a few months in Germany now, and actually there are live events happening. About 2 weeks ago, I heard my first live event again with a hall full of people, and so it's possible to do that. There are precautions, of course, but I was really glad to hear and see something that has been a very long time that we only looked at screens.
Did it feel? I guess my question is, or my thinking is sort of close to normal. I have, since the spring, since April, I've gone to several indoor concerts, but each one of them has had limited audience and people still sitting at a distance. And even as at the end of June here in New York City, although conditions are much better, everyone was wearing masks per the request of the venue. Was that the situation for you at this live event?
Same thing. Yes, people were they had 2 chairs in between. People wearing masks. There's a lot of precautions. That is definitely true. It's still kind of a weird thing to do, but once you're sitting down, you forget about it and you're happy about it as hearing a live concert.
Yeah, I agree. It's been an interesting situation. Of course, making music is a social activity, and it's something that we as human beings do together and we've been doing for tens of thousands of years. So that's natural. At the same time, I've found that even the little bit of separation is still it's been a little bit odd. Not quite the experience that I'm used to. Has that been the same for you, or does it feel almost close to normal?
No, I agree with you. We're still not there. And the uncertainty will not leave us. So I'm very optimistic that the festival will happen the way we planned it. But at the same time, I still don't know how many people exactly we can let in. We have not started to sell tickets because we wait as long as possible to understand what is the right thing to do and what is possible, how many people can get in, what are the rules at the time, exactly will they change. So tickets will not go on sale until August 1st for that reason.
Okay.
We don't know, and it does not feel normal, and we are afraid, and I'm afraid that something might happen that might close something down, because naturally also, if we have a string quartet concert and or another any group, a large group too, any concert where somebody would test positive who has been in rehearsals, that would immediately shut down the whole concert. And that, of course, is a danger right now that we have not had before the COVID started.
Okay, that's actually very interesting, and I think very important to hear from you, which is that you're still managing a lot of uncertainties, and you still have to be prepared to cancel things as needed in case someone has picked up COVID. I mean,
that is absolutely right. Yes. Yeah.
Hopefully, this is less and less likely every day. And again, the situation in New York City is so much better than it used to be, meaning that it is possible that we can, time spans can happen, that the New York Philharmonic has a whole, and Carnegie Hall and the Metropolitan Opera and the jazz clubs are open again. They have, these seasons are now in the works, and you can go hear live music, but I guess everything is still feeling kind of contingent on circumstances.
Very much so. Very much so. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, and of course, I've been trying to line up Plan Bs. So last year, since the whole festival was canceled, we produced 10 videos. Some of them directly relate to programming, some of them not. We also produced a full film of Georg Friedrich Haas and Molina Williams Haas' Hyena, where it's not a concert film anymore. It's really a film that's the piece itself. So the video making has evolved actually in the past year, and I've been thinking that if concerts will be canceled again, I'm lining up video productions with these groups and for these pieces immediately as a second option.
Okay, this is really great to know the kind of behind the scenes details of how you can possibly make this happen. And I know we're going to show some video from you, and we'll introduce that in a little bit, but I wanted to ask you a further question about this topic, which is that for all the musicians you have engaged for this festival, and it's really a tremendous lineup of ensembles, including Jack Quartet and Talea Ensemble. Alarmo Sound is coming. Tony Arnold is going to be there. This is another reason why it is such an important festival, I think, this year, which is not just that it's happening, period, but all the exciting new music, and you've got leading names for performances here. But are the musicians trying to, I imagine they are, but it's important for them to really be rigorous about their pandemic protocols so that they can end up fulfilling the performances? Is that something that you work on with them?
Definitely. The musicians have protocols, the groups have protocols, our own team has protocols, the building has protocols, which we coordinate all of those. Last year, we gave out a large document for everybody. We are very careful, and we are trying to do everything that's possible to rule out risks. And I truly hope that we can have every single event. But at the same time, I think it's necessary to think about the musicians and the groups, the performers themselves. So what happens to them if the concert is not happening. And so as a result, last year when Time Spans was canceled, we created videos of certain pieces. Then the ensembles, I also organized or requested or commissioned that the ensembles would do recordings, so I could actually still give them an equivalent of what they would have earned as groups and musicians in the festival, rather than just postponing to the next year. In other words, so International Contemporary Ensemble did video recordings themselves. Alarm Will Sound did an audio recording by Tyshawn Sorry's piece for George Lewis, and this will now be played in the festival as planned last year. And by then we hope to have a CD ready. Thalia Ensemble recorded a number of things. Hyena, I already said they recorded the music for that, but they also recorded a piece that Times Spans Festival financed by Oscar Bedison, which is called La Arqueologia del Neon. So the recording is now out, and they will premiere the piece in the festival. And in a similar way, you know, we have recorded with Jan Weyer, we have recorded with Jack Quartet. I was trying to make sure that I'm not just telling everybody the festival is canceled, you come back next year and that's when I pay you. I was trying to use these funds to create either content on video that we could perform, or to create new content that we then could perform in the future, or simply distribute.
Okay, that's fantastic. Also, not many organizations had been able to still fund musicians for any kind of performance. Chamber Music Society did so, and of course yours did so, and there's a very small handful, so that's great to hear. I think that was a great time to show this video that you sent us, because this is a piece that was supposed to be premiered last year live, and this is one of the pieces you've been talking about where you made a video recording of it in the meantime, and that this is available, but the live performance will happen again for this 2021 festival.
Yes, that's right. That's a piece called Little Jimmy by Andrew McIntosh, written for Yarnwire. And we created a number of videos, some of them made by a production company called 410. They create wonderful visuals. It sounds fantastic. Kaylee Monahan Ward, sound engineer, who is also in charge of the festival, was in charge of the sound of that. We have an online showcase of these pieces where directly from a link from the website. And so people can watch these videos. And yes, the premiere will happen on August 24 in the festival, which I think is wonderful.
Okay, great. Well, we will roll some of this video right now and take a look at it, and then we'll come back and talk for a few more minutes. All right, that was video of Andrew McIntosh's Little Jimmy, which was made last year, but the piece will be performed for the first time in front of a live audience. Hopefully, that's the plan for this year's Time Spans Festival, and that performance is going to be August 24th. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and how are you feeling optimistic about the whole thing coming off? Do you think everything's gonna work out?
I'm feeling optimistic. Yes,
Okay.
I do.
That's good. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, it's I know, from the inside and the outside, everyone is really just eager to have that normal experience again of going out and being around other people and having that connection with a live performance between the audience, the musicians, and the audience members amongst themselves. So it's, even with masks on and even at some distance, it will be I'm really looking forward to this. Now, I know that you said before that you're still working out all the details for the audience, and that tickets won't be on sale until August 1st. Where's the place where people can get tickets? Is it through the Time Spans website, or can they go to the Tennis Center and purchase tickets?
There will be ticket links at the website.
Okay.
Each concert page has a ticket link, and as soon as they open, they can be purchased there. And for the MPEG event, tickets will need to be purchased again because there's a limitation of 25 people in the space for each event.
Okay.
I can't tell prices yet, even it's just necessary to have a ticket, and this event will be happening on time. So it's not an installation where somebody could just walk in anytime and
Sure.
hear and see something. It's really like a concert, but without live musicians.
Right. Oh, it seems very similar to getting a time ticket for some kind of crowded museum show.
Yes, exactly.
And for the tickets themselves for the festival, people can buy individual concert tickets, but also they can get a pass for the whole festival. Is that right?
Yes, they can do both. Although we have to find a way to, if somebody buys a pass, to organize the MPEG event, so that it's not possible to just go into any event, because then we might have too many people in one. But generally, we will most likely have a pass from August 17 to August 29, and treat the MPEG event differently. But yes, really, the pass is going to be very inexpensive if you look at how many concerts you will be able to attend with that. Yeah.
Well, so and the whole festival again opens on August 12th with the MPEG installation, and the first live concert is August 17, and then the entire festival runs through August 29. That's
correct. And these other events are all live concerts.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and I'm serious when I say this, that for anyone who's interested in music, this is going to be the thing that you have to get to in New York City before the end of the year, and actually most of North America. So it's very exciting that you're heading towards pulling this off. Again, we've been talking with Thomas Fichte, who's the artistic director of Time Spans Festival. And also, if you would, could you just explain the connection between Time Spans and the Earl Brown Foundation?
Yes, the Earl Brown Music Foundation, which actually is fully called the Earl Brown Music Foundation Charitable Trust, is funding the Time Spans Festival. It came out of the foundation. I'm director of the foundation too. Actually, the title is taken from an orchestra piece by Earl Brown called Time Spans. And the whole festival is made possible by the Earl Brown Music Foundation Charitable Trust.
Fantastic. And there's the great connection to, of course, the New York School of Composition. Again, Thomas Fichte, Artistic Director of Time Spans Festival, thank you for joining us. The Time Spans Festival is going to be happening this year. I'm pretty sure at least a lot of it is going to happen. Regardless, and again, that's at the Domenis Center, August 12th through 29th. And get to as much as possible. Thank
Thank you
again.
so much. And thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
I want to thank today's guests again, Patricia, Nicholson, Parker, Thomas Fichte, and Darius Jones for this fantastic conversation about live music. And now at the Rail, we have a tradition at the New Social Environment and for all of our community events to have a poetry reading. And I'm thrilled to welcome Rail staff member Catherine, who is going to be our reader today. Over to you, Catherine.
Thanks, George. Thank you, Patricia, Darius, Thomas. Again, I'm Catherine. I'm Director of Advertising here at the Rail. And I'm going to be reading a short poem by M. Sullivan, who lives and works in Brooklyn. Okay. America, you are unborn. You created me, and it was me who created you. America, they're overcrowded on the edge of cities, overcrowded like me, like they're overcrowded in the rising suburbs. Better take back what's ours, America. They're sinking below the Pacific, sinking like me. The day is becoming shallow. The light falling across the doors, all painted white. The rain falls on the treetops. The rain falls on the mountaintops. The rain falls on the rooftops. That night was like a red pebble falling innocently through very clear and very still water. Now the moonlight rises in golden waves. The midnight rises gently, and you stand at the foothills of the mountain, looking up. The whir of cicadas, the hum of tree frogs rise and fall with the wind. The wind is bold as iron, painting dark lines through the leaves of trees, and your breath tastes like metallic water. How easily we forget, America, you are unborn. And that's by M. Sullivan. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for choosing that poem. That was wonderful. And thank you for everyone who's watching this on our YouTube channel. Please rate, excuse me. Please visit the Rails event page. It's complicated to say, to view all the other conversations for the New Social Environment this week and in the past and in perpetuity. That's you can find those at brooklynrail.org/events. And thank you for watching as well. Again, I'm Brooklyn Rail Music Editor George Grella, and we're here to tell you that you can't beat live music, so get out there. Thank you.